Enotria, The Last Song, is a new Souls-like set to release on the 18th of September 2024. But is it any good? Let's take a closer look at the demo that's just been released. Inspired by Italian folklore, you play as the Maskless One, a being who has no given role and is free to act independently. Unlike the rest of the world who have been gripped by the Canavaccio, an evil eternal play pushed on the world by the feared authors. Your job is to snap the world out of this hellish loop and restore normality to the land. And before we go any further, there are a lot of Italian words in this game and I apologise for butchering them in advance. Graphically, the game takes a departure from the usual dark and grimy setting of its Souls-like contemporaries, at least for the majority of this demo, opting for a sun-drenched coastal aesthetic. If it wasn't for the deranged actors trying to murder you, you could picture yourself taking a nice vacation here. Scenery and backgrounds are nicely drawn and really feed into the rustic Italian feel. The graphics didn't make my jaw drop during my roughly 10 hours with this demo, but I never had a problem with them either. Perfectly decent for a game of this ilk, I would say. The main character model is distinct and nicely animated, as are the enemies I encountered, of which the dev says will number around 100 when the game releases. The music is suitably atmospheric and fitting for the game, giving off rural folk music vibes. Voice acting, of which I encountered very little, was absolutely fine. Souls-likes are not really known for their wordy characters and extensive cutscenes, and Enotria is no exception, but what is here was perfectly good. Where the game really shines though is in the gameplay department. What is here is pretty solid and I had a lot of fun in the time I had with this game. Levels are linear with branching paths and shortcuts aplenty. Venturing off the beaten path is often rewarded with new weapons, items or new mask fragments. More on masks later though. Levels also have a few surprises up their ragu stained sleeves in the form of rifts. Iridescent swirling patterns which require you to use your power of Adore to activate hidden parts of the level. It can be anything as simple as removing a floor down to a previously unreachable item, or it can be part of a much more complex puzzle that helps you reach a new part of the area. Additionally, you can activate combat rifts which change the part of the level you are in and populates it with new enemies which you have to dispatch before you can leave. These rifts are a welcome original touch and break up the gameplay nicely. Combat follows a lot of Enotria's peers in that you have a weak attack, heavy attack and the obligatory stamina bar that needs to be carefully managed during encounters so you don't end up running out of steam and leaving yourself vulnerable. Like other games in the genre, Enotria places an emphasis on parrying, but this is mixed up by the introduction of gems. Gems change certain aspects of parrying to make it easier, harder, or just plain different. For example, if you want to parry spells, there is a gem that allows you to do it. Gems are a way of fine-tuning the parry mechanics to your playstyle. Practicing parrying can be quite beneficial. Enemies have an unravelling bar, and if you manage to parry and hit consistently, this bar fills and stuns your enemy, allowing you to pull off a devastating riposte attack. This even works on bosses. It's an interesting new take on a tried and tested mechanic and it works really well. Another way Enotria is mixing up the genre norms is with masks, aspects and the loadout system. Masks are basically modifiers for your character and are dropped by dispatched foes. They grant you uplifts in some areas and in others they may make you weaker. It's up to you as the player to use the masks you think will be most beneficial for your build. The mask system is further strengthened by loadouts. A loadout is a completely separate version of your character. You can wear a different mask, have different weapons equipped, different items and abilities, the whole 9 yards. And what's best about this system is you can freely and easily swap between loadouts while you play. You can even swap to a new loadout mid-battle if you want. It's a fantastic idea and it's immensely fun to use. I was having a hard time killing a certain enemy with my heavy tank build. I quickly swapped to my more agile, faster hitting loadout and problem solved. It encourages experimentation and it solves one of my pet gripes with games in the Souls-like genre of not being able to try out new builds that easily. You may need new stats and it often requires multiple playthroughs, but this system negates that. You can build a new character to a loadout and try out new weapons and stats and can even refund spent Memoria and pump them back into upgrades for a different weapon. It's an incredibly flexible system and I really enjoyed using it. Loadouts can be further augmented with aspects. An aspect is a set of stats that can vary wildly from the ones you have assigned. It's a way of quickly creating a build with a specialisation that you wouldn't ordinarily have. For example, if you find a weapon you don't have the stats to use, you could add an aspect to a particular loadout and that character then may be able to use that weapon. It's another very flexible mechanic that brings a new dimension to the genre. Magic in Enotria, the last song, is another area where the devs have diverted somewhat from the Souls-like formula. All builds have access to magic in the form of lines, special abilities that you can equip up to a maximum of 4 at a time. Upon hitting enemies, the lines meters build up and allows repeated use. These lines can be upgraded like weapons, so depending on how heavily you want to use lines, you can put Memoria into them or not. To top off the extensive list of combat mechanics at your fingertips, there is the Path of Innovators. By playing the game and discovering its lore and story, you will gain inspiration, a separate form of currency that can be used to purchase all sorts of perks. This system encourages you to explore. The more inspiration, the more perks you can buy, the more of a badass you become. If this demo is anything to go by, Enotria the Last Song is going to be a solid entry in a rapidly growing Souls-like space. It manages to walk the line between tried and tested and new and innovative really well. Souls-like veterans will feel immediately at home while wrapping their head around some of the more unique systems in the game, and newcomers will probably find this game slightly more forgiving than the other more established Soulsy games. Overall, I think Enotria looks very promising and I can't wait until the full release so I can dive back into this colourful, disturbing but ultimately fun world. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.